People in that apartment building will never forget the night Ada finally snapped. It wasn't because of a scream this time, it was because of silence. A startling, impossible silence after years of noise. For the first time since anyone could remember. John staggered into the compound drunk. And instead of shouting, instead of breaking plates, instead of hurling insults at his wife, he quietly bent down and picked up the slippers Ada forgot outside. Neighbors peeked through windows. A grown man, reeking of alcohol, carrying shoes carefully like a servant. He even knocked on the door before entering. "Sweetheart, I am home." Those who saw it felt something tighten in their chest. Something was wrong. Very wrong. But Ada just smiled. The kind of smile that comes only when a woman has reached the end of tears. And found something colder. Something that doesn't need prayers or pity. On the shelf behind her, hidden between folded bedsheets, sat a slim white glass bottle, sealed with a cork that looked newer than everything else in the room. Nobody knew when she brought it. Nobody knew what it contained. But Ada looked at it often, as if her husband's soul lived inside it. In her hand, she held power. But when power comes from brokenness, it always bites back in the end. This story is not about miracles. It is about consequences. And the day that bottle would open, a mind would shatter beyond repair. Before neighbors ever saw John carrying slippers like a servant, they saw Ada shrinking, little by little, inside that home. When she married him, people said she was blessed. A good man, handsome, driven, city-employed. Ada believed it too. She cooked with love, decorated their small apartment, did laundry while humming lullabies. But somewhere within the walls of that home, his love soured faster than milk. John began returning late. First with excuses, then with insults. "You should be grateful someone like me married you. You look tired, who would want you? You are lucky I don't throw you out." Every word shook her spirit. But words soon turned to blows. If a shirt wasn't ironed, he slapped her. If food wasn't hot enough, he hit her. If dinner delayed by 5 minutes, he kicked the pot aside. Ada cried almost every night, holding her pillow tight to muffle the sound, so her son wouldn't wake up and see his mother breaking. Yet every morning she still woke before dawn, sweeping, cooking, smiling through swelling eyes. Her neighbors whispered, "She behaves like a maid for her own husband." They were right. John didn't treat her as wife. He treated her as property. Ada endured, believing in change. But sometimes change never comes. Sometimes pain teaches a woman to seek what prayers could not deliver. Gozi had been Ada's friend since school. She watched Ada fade like wet paint. Bright once, but now dull, peeling, ghost-like. One afternoon, after John threw a plate at Ada for mistakenly adding too much salt, Gozi rushed over. She found Ada on the kitchen floor, shaking, crying, holding her cheek. "Enough!" Gozi whispered fiercely. "You'll die here if you don't leave. He will kill you one day." Ada wiped tears, voice trembling. "If I go, where will I take my child? What will I eat? Everybody will blame me." Gozi leaned in, lowered tone. "There are ways men can be taught." Her eyes darkened, voice steady. "There is someone, an old woman in my mother's village. She helps women reclaim power." Ada didn't respond immediately. Fear wrestled with desperation. She was tired of praying, tired of hoping, tired of bleeding inside and outside. Later that night, while John slept drunk and snoring loudly, Ada lay awake thinking. Rain hit the window, the same way his fist hit her heart. Maybe, she thought, I deserve peace too. So when morning came, Ada whispered to Ngozi, "I'm ready." Pain had finally carved space where courage could grow. And courage would lead her into a forest where answers never come free. Ada left with Ngozi the next weekend. Their son stayed with a neighbor. John didn't even ask where she was going. Only barked, "Come back before evening, or don't bother returning." Ada didn't reply. She just walked away. They traveled hours. From noisy city roads, to quiet village paths, to the edge of a thick forest. Gozi stopped. "This is as far as I go," she warned. "She doesn't see two people at once." Ada's heart pounded. But she walked alone. Branches brushed her skin. Birds scattered. Air turned strangely cold. At last, she reached a small house built of old wood. Smoke curled from its chimney. Door opened before she could knock. A wrinkled woman with sharp eyes appeared. Not smiling, but not hostile either. "You came because suffering chased you," she said softly. "Sit." Ada told her story. Every slap, every insult, every tear. The woman listened without blinking. When Ada finished, the woman nodded slowly. "Your husband's spirit must be tamed before he destroys you." She reached behind her shelf and pulled out a slim white glass bottle, clear enough to see faint movement inside, like mist swirling. "This," she said, "is where his power will live. As long as it stays sealed, he will bend, obey, serve." Ada's hands shook as she reached for it. The woman did not pray over it. She simply said, "Don't open it. No matter what." Ada left, not knowing she had just accepted a blessing. That behaves like a curse. Ada returned before sunrise. John was sprawled on the bed, snoring, stinking of alcohol. She placed the bottle quietly on the shelf and whispered the words the woman taught her, barely believing anything would happen. Morning came. John woke, looked around, then did something unthinkable. He cleaned the sitting room. He washed plates. He asked, "Ada, do you need anything?" Ada stared, speechless. He ironed clothes, fetched water, even swept the compound, while neighbors watched with eyes wide. Day after day, he grew more obedient, calm, even tender. He apologized repeatedly. "I don't know what overcame me. I want to change." Ada smiled through tears. For the first time, she tasted peace, freedom, control. She didn't feel like a maid anymore. Her bruises healed. Her son laughed again. And Ada, for the first time, felt powerful. But the spiritualist's warning lingered silently. Never open it. And every power that bends another human eventually asks for payment. A payment Ada didn't know was already coming. Step by step, breath by breath, towards her. Weeks turned into months, and Ada's life transformed like night turning to morning. John no longer raised his voice, he lowered his head. He no longer lifted his fists, he lifted laundry baskets and mopped floors. Ada's neighbors whispered, "Has John become her houseba? Ada is blessed, she must have found something." Some admired her. Others envied her. But no one questioned the peace glowing on her face. Ada slowly began enjoying giving commands. "John, wash the curtains. John, cook the rice before I return. John, don't talk unless I speak first." He obeyed everything. Mechanically. Emotionlessly. Sometimes Ada would look at the white bottle, clear and harmless on the shelf, and whisper, "You've finally turned into the man I prayed for." But once in a while, late at night, she heard faint rattling from inside the wardrobe, like something tapping to be released. She blamed it on imagination, pulled covers tighter, and closed her eyes. John's transformation began to feel normal, natural, deserved. Friends visited and gushed. "Ada! He respects you now." Ada smiled proudly. But when Gozi looked, she didn't smile. Her eyes lingered on the bottle, as if sensing something Ada couldn't. "Just be careful," Gozi warned softly. "Nothing comes free." Ada waved it off. Why fear the thing that saved her? After all, she had won, hadn't she? She didn't realize power, once tasted, grows thicker than wine, and often poisons its owner long before they notice. The shift began subtly. John sometimes paused mid-task, staring into space as if hearing voices Ada couldn't. John, continue! Ada would snap. He blinked, lost, and continued scrubbing. At night, Ada began dreaming unsettling scenes. Villages burning. Women screaming. A woman with white hair standing at the edge of a river, whispering her name. She woke sweating, heart racing, but dismissed it. One afternoon, Ada came home early and caught John sitting on the floor, hugging his knees, murmuring, I can't hear myself anymore. I don't know who I am. Ada's skin prickled. She shook him. You're fine. Just continue your work. He nodded blankly and resumed washing dishes. Gozi visited and sat beside Ada while John ironed clothes silently. Are you truly happy? Gozi asked quietly. Ada frowned. Of course. This is what I prayed for. But is it what you married for? Ada didn't answer. Gozi glanced toward the wardrobe and lowered her tone. Bottles break, Ada. When they do, something must take the punishment. Ada stiffened. Nothing will break. Stop frightening me. Gozi sighed. Ada had fallen in love with control. And when people fall in love with power, they stop seeing its cracks. It happened at night. The sound like metal clashing inside would. Ada woke sharply. The wardrobe rattled, shaking hard enough to thump against the wall. She rushed to open it. And the white bottle lay on its side, rolling violently. John was asleep, breathing heavily, but tears streamed from his closed eyes. Ada panicked, grabbed the bottle, tightened the cork. The moment she did, everything fell silent. John stopped twitching and turned over calmly. Ada stood trembling, thinking, what exactly is inside this bottle? The spiritualist hadn't said. She only said, don't open it. Ada placed the bottle back gently, walked to bed, and lay awake till dawn. At breakfast she told John, you're fine. You're safe. He nodded like a child, who didn't understand the words but obeyed anyway. Ada looked at him. Obedient, loyal, emptied. And for the first time, a chill ran through her. Had she saved him? Or broken him? She pushed the thought away. Better a broken servant than a brutal husband, she told herself. But fate has a way of turning answers into questions. One Saturday afternoon, Ada was chatting with neighbors outside when John rushed out. Panicked, breathless. Chinidu is playing with your things. Ada's blood froze. She ran into the room and saw her little boy laughing, swinging the white bottle in his small hands. No! She screamed, snatching it away. Chinidu began crying. Why can't I play with it? It's not a toy, Ada snapped, voice shaking more than she expected. John hovered at the doorway, hands twitching, eyes vacant, like a dog sensing lightning before thunder. Ada hid the bottle again, deep under the mattress, but her hands were trembling long after. That night, John stared at her with confusion, as if seeing her for the first time in months. Ada, where have I been? She forced a smile. Rest. Everything is fine. But John shook his head. No. I feel missing. Ada turned away. Missing or not, he belonged where she placed him now. But for the first time, control didn't feel secure. It felt fragile, like glass waiting to fall. Ada started locking doors, hiding keys, checking constantly that the bottle was secure. She became protective, almost obsessed. John's obedience continued, but he grew pale, faint, disconnected, as though something was draining him internally. Neighbors whispered again. This man looks bewitched. He used to be strong. What happened to him? Ada heard them, but walked with her head high, yet alone. She sometimes looked at John, and wondered if she'd gone too far. He washed plates as though fighting shadows, folded clothes while whispering apologies. Even when no one was scolding him, Ngozi visited and watched in silence. Ada, your piece looks too quiet. Quiet like a grave. Ada hissed. You don't understand. I'm safe now. Ngozi shook her head. Safe isn't always the same as right. But Ada shut the door behind her friend and leaned against it, breathing hard. Control was her shield. But it was beginning to feel like her prison. She didn't know it yet. But madness often begins. Not with chaos, but with silence growing too loud inside. Ada expected gratitude from John. But instead she began noticing fear. When she entered a room, he stiffened like a student awaiting punishment. If her footsteps sounded fast, he pressed himself against the wall. He started trembling when she spoke too loudly. And once, when she reached for the wardrobe, he gasped and stumbled backward as if expecting lightning. What is wrong with you? Ada asked sharply. I don't know who I am anymore, John whispered, voice cracking. I dream of being trapped. I hear someone calling but I can't answer. Ada frowned. You are fine. Just behave well and everything will stay peaceful. John nodded automatically. Eyes hollow. Soul slipping somewhere Ada could not see. She began to sense something disturbing. John wasn't simply obedient. He was fading. Like his personality was dissolving. And all that remained was reflex, not thought. Sometimes she found him staring at the wall, muttering, Ada, help me! Ada! But she always snapped him out of it. Afraid of acknowledging the truth. Her peace was eating him alive. Control had turned into a mirror, reflecting a version of her she never intended to be. But power rarely lets its owners see the monster they become. Until it is too late. It was a rainy night, when Ada woke to a noise that did not belong. Tap, tap, tap. From under her bed. Sharp enough to jolt sleep away. Her heart hammered. She leaned down, lifted the mattress, and froze. The white bottle was vibrating violently, rolling back and forth, as if something inside was slamming against the walls. Ada whispered angrily, Stop! And grabbed it. The moment her palm touched the glass, a strange cold pulse ran up her arm. She almost dropped it. John jerked awake at the exact same moment, gripping his throat, gasping, eyes wide in terror, as if invisible hands were squeezing him. Ada panicked, tightened the cork, and the bottle instantly stilled. John collapsed onto the pillow, breathing weakly. Ada sat shaking, bottle in hand, realizing her husband's life was directly tied to the seal she guarded. But there was another realization. The power inside the bottle wasn't sleeping anymore. It was restless, alive, testing the limits of its prison. She held the bottle to her chest, whispering, You will not leave me. You belong to me now. She didn't notice that her dependence on it was becoming just as dangerous as John's imprisonment inside it. The woman who once cried alone and begged for affection was gone. In her place stood someone colder, less compassionate, almost hungry for obedience. She found herself ordering John around, even when tasks didn't need doing, just to feel the thrill of command. She began staying indoors more, guarding the bottle like treasure. If Ngozi asked questions, Ada snapped, Mind your life, I'm finally happy. But the truth was, she wasn't happy anymore. She was anxious, paranoid, afraid the bottle might break, afraid someone might find it. She began resenting her son touching things in the house. She started screaming when he asked about the bottle. John noticed from his muted world, but he could not speak up. His voice was leashed to the cork. Ada felt pity sometimes, but buried it under memories of bruises and insults. He deserves this, she muttered to herself. He made me cry for years. But revenge disguised as justice never really satisfies. It only reshapes pain and gives it new wings. And Ada was beginning to grow those wings. One afternoon, Ngozi arrived unannounced. She sat Ada down, voice clipped but trembling. "I went to the village," she confessed. "I visited the old woman." Ada stiffened. "What for?" "She asked me one question. Did you warn your friend about the debt that bottle demands?" Ada's irritation flared. "I owe nothing. I suffered, I deserve peace." Ngozi shook her head, voice rising. "Ada, control is not peace. You may have fixed him, but something in you is breaking." Ada stood up sharply. "I don't want your counsel. My life is finally working." Ngozi stared at her sadly. "You used to cry because he hurt you. Now you smile because you can command him. Is that all you wanted, to be the abuser instead of the abused?" The question stabbed deeper than Ada expected. She shouted, "Leave my house!" Ngozi walked away slowly, turning at the doorway. Bottles open themselves when their owners forget why they sealed them. Ada slammed the door shut, heart pounding, face burning. But Ngozi's words echoed in the room long after. Because somewhere inside, Ada already knew. She wasn't the victim anymore. She had become something else entirely. Ada stopped sleeping well. Her dreams became looping illusions. John begging. The old woman watching. The bottle cracking. Her son screaming her name. She woke breathless each time. She began pacing the house at night, checking windows, touching the bottle to make sure it was sealed. During the day she snapped at John for breathing too loudly, at her son for asking questions, at neighbors for nothing at all. Sometimes she heard tapping sounds, when no bottle was in sight. Sometimes she saw flickers of someone standing near the wardrobe. Even though the room was empty, she spoke to herself. "Nothing will break. Everything is under control. I am in charge." But her voice often shook, as if she didn't believe her own words anymore. Control that once brought comfort was now consuming her mind. John, quieter than ever, watched with frightened eyes. But when he tried to speak, his throat tightened, the bottle reminding him of its leash. Ada couldn't see it. She was becoming the prisoner of the same object she used to imprison him. The bottle was no longer just in her wardrobe. It was in her thoughts, her pulse, her sanity, waiting for the moment to strike and take back everything it gave her. 3 years passed. Ada mastered control like a pianist mastering keys. She snapped her fingers, John obeyed. She whispered, he trembled. She smiled, he rushed to serve. But beneath her satisfaction, whispers began to stain the air. Some nights, she heard faint tapping inside the white bottle. Talk, talk, talk. As if something inside was trying to push out. She brushed it off. Just air pressure. But the tapping grew louder with each passing month. One dawn, she woke to find a fine hairline crack along its neck. Her heart seized. Fear, real fear, returned for the first time in years. She hid the bottle under her mattress, tightened her curtains, and watched John kneel in the parlor, begging to wash her slippers. Control was beginning to slip, and she didn't know how to stop it. One evening, John paused mid-task, mop in hand, eyes blinking strangely. Ada, he whispered. Why am I holding this mop? Her blood froze. He had never questioned anything in years. It meant the bottle's hold was weakening. She forced a smile. You're just tired, rest. He obeyed, but confusion sat heavy in his eyes, like someone waking from a long nightmare. That night, she dreamt of the old herbalist. The woman stood beside a broken bottle, whispering, What you control too long eventually controls you. Ada woke drenched in sweat. John stared at her, sitting upright. But his face looked like someone she barely recognized. Morning came. A gust of wind slammed her bedroom door, and she heard it. A soft pop under her bed. She threw back the mattress. The white bottle lay split wide open, cork on the floor. A thin mist rising from it like vapor. Ada? John's voice echoed from the sitting room. But this time, it wasn't submissive. It wasn't weak. It carried awareness. Anger. Confusion. Something resurrected. He stood before her. Eyes blazing with years stolen. What did you do to me? Her sight blurred. Her mind began to spiral. The world twisted. Chairs bending, colors bleeding. Voices whispering from the walls. Ada staggered backward. Hands clutching her head. Close it, close it, close it! She screamed. But the bottle was open. And something invisible crawled back into John. As sanity crawled out of Ada. John's memory flooded. Pain. Ruin. Lost dignity. Lost years. Ada. His voice was shaking. Not from fear. But from fury and pity tangled. What did you become? Ada laughed. A shrill crack tearing her throat. Then screamed as though flames licked her skull. Neighbors rushed in. And found Ada rolling on the floor. Calling John. Master. Begging him for chores. Wailing for orders that would never come. John stared. Broken. Haunted. But powerless. Doctors came. Took Ada away. But her voice never returned to sense. She wandered the hospital corridor. Scrubbing floors no one asked her to clean. Calling for approval that would never come. The whispered truths spread through town. Be careful what you control. Because when the chain breaks, it binds the owner. John never touched alcohol again. He lived quietly. Guilty, confused. Watching their son grow. Some nights, he walked past the hospital ward. Listening to Ada hum lullabies. The tune broken, mind shattered. No one knew how a bottle sealed a fate. They only saw the ending. Where the oppressor became slave. And the victim became prisoner of her own vengeance. In the end, that white bottle stood empty. But the real prison rested in Ada's skull. Permanent, irreversible. The price of power taken. Without understanding its cost. Because sometimes, justice is too heavy for mortal hands. And when revenge pours, sanity drowns. In the end, every choice carries a weight. And every action leaves a shadow. If this story touched your heart, remember, patience has limits. And healing begins when truth is faced. Share your thoughts in the comments. Like the video if the lesson spoke to you. And subscribe. So more stories with meaning and wisdom can find you.